Welcome to the Craftsman Podcast, where we want to help build people who love better, live better, and leave the world better through raw and honest conversations.
Let's go.
All right.
That's crazy. You just ran in here from another room like that and just jumped on the couch and started. I'm just kidding.
Here we go. Welcome to episode 3, everybody. I've got my friend Dave. He's also happens to be my neighbor. And he sent me a text today wondering what the green room would look like. Mm-hmm. And also why the limo didn't come to pick him up.
Yeah, I had to walk here. It was like 200 feet.
It was. Literally had to throw a rock at your house.
I think you have thrown rocks in my house. I find him in my yard in the morning.
That would be so rude.
Like that.
If you had like a neighbor that was a rock thrower, like like the guy who throws it in your grass just so it screws your lawnmower up?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That'd be terrible. I'd hate to be that kind of neighbor, man.
That'd be a rough one. I think they exist though.
They do exist. I've heard of stories. You see YouTube videos?
I've seen one or two.
Of these neighbors who, they're just terrible. They just try to like destroy for no reason. It's the stupidest thing.
Yeah, people are petty.
Being neighborly is lost. You remember when they used to not have fences? We used to live in a culture where everybody trusted each other generally. I mean, there's a general trust.
Yeah.
But that's because the general idea of morality, what's right and wrong, has been so skewed and jacked up.
I agree with you.
You know?
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I would love to find out, like, just a little bit about yourself, where you're from, who you are. I want to kind of get into your faith journey at some point. Yeah, man.
I'll try to kind of wrap it all in together.
Go for it.
All right. I'm 40 now. I feel like I'm in a really happy place in my life.
Yeah.
I would say I'll intertwine this around my spiritual kind of side through it. But early age, I grew up in a household with mom and a stepdad. My mom was very much Christian, kind of Baptist upbringing. Mm-hmm. My stepdad was Catholic. So every other weekend was different. I also went to church with my friends who were Lutheran.
You had a big
so it was and it couldn't have been better for me with my personality and who I am. I'm those people. I need to take in a lot of information so I can feel that my decisions or whatever are good. So I started off, I would say, not in the church the way that when someone says like I grew up in the church, but like I was involved.
You were around it.
Yeah, I understood the things. I understood what church I'm supposed to, and and the things you're supposed to say. So it gave me kind of an interesting background to some pretty dominant religions.
Yeah.
Right? And then my sister, who's 5 years older than me, like a mother to me, love her to death. Like absolutely amazing person. She did that whole teenage thing where they had a hard time.
Oh yeah, that happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it was hard for me because she was like, my mom, when my mom separated, my mom worked for Harris County. She worked night shifts. She worked her butt off. So my sister was always the one there. My sister was the one who helped me with those things. Don't get me wrong. My mom was always there.
Sure.
But that bond with my sister. So when she started hanging out with the wrong people, gangbangers and doing things that she's not supposed to do, not only did it affect me and like, that's my sister, that's somebody I look up to, but it started hitting me with questions that I struggled with. And when I say I was 7, 8, 9 years old, struggling with some of these questions, and one of the biggest ones that I had was, my sister's gonna die. My sister's gonna die because she's hanging out with the wrong crowd. Mind you, I have a whole family of law enforcement, so I understand all of the horror stories and the don't do this because it's the wrong place to be.
Wow.
And so I know in my mind, my sister's gonna die. And she hasn't done what she needed to. I don't even know what needed to is. I just know that in that moment, she would have had her sin. She would have had that weight on her. And if she, according to some religion, if she didn't have that sin forgiven, she didn't do certain things, she's going to go to hell.
Right.
And I genuinely felt, I'm going to heaven. I know I'm going to heaven. I feel it inside. I know it's a place where I'm going to be. How can I be happy for an eternity in heaven, knowing that somebody like my sister is burning an eternity in hell.
See, this is crazy. I think that this is a really important thing for us to like work through for a lot of people. So I think this story it's both common and unique at the same time, right? Because it's your story, so it's unique. But this idea of heaven and hell and the way that it's taught in church isn't helpful. But I believe squarely that heaven is real. I believe squarely that hell is real. But I think that we forget about God's desire for us to be with him forever and his absolute relentless pursuit of people who, like me, I don't know the rest of your story yet, but whether it's your sister or my family, the idea of sitting in this rainbows and sunshine, which I believe heaven to be something outside of my understanding. I don't think that we can even sort of comprehend the measure of peace, greatness, all these things. And being fully separated from God, which is how I came to understand hell, right? If there's zero presence of God, like the world is kind of crazy as it is, but the presence of God is still available, but still around. A place that is absent of light and completely separated from any goodness that God provides of his presence sounds pretty awful to me. But to your point, it's like, how can you be happy when people that you love may be separated from that goodness and grace, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, my views are very different from then on how I view things.
I'm sure.
And like some of the things you just said.
But that's how you felt then.
Yeah, 100%. So it was the first time I ever questioned, like, man, is this what I want? Is this what I'm going to invest myself in? Is this what I believe? Is this right? Does this feel right to me? And at the time I was still involved. I went to, at the time it was called like Awanas.
Oh, we know all about Awanas.
Yeah. And it was fun because it was competitive, like the little games, but like it was also really cool to go through, read some of the scripture, do your little books and like meet other people.
Right.
So it was cool for me. I kind of had that influence where I was still kind of being reinforced. At that point, no one in my family really went to church often. It wasn't even really a thing. And then got a little bit older and I started doing, they called it Reload, which was at Bear Creek Baptist Church.
Isn't it so funny that like the words that we come up with in church?
Yeah.
And I'm guilty. I come with all sorts of creative things, right?
Well, it's symbolism, right? And words are power.
They do.
Words hold power. So going through that whole process, I would say that's where I really struggle with it the hardest. And that's where it really started with me. And that's because I was guilty of it as well. I wasn't going to Reload to get my glass filled. I was going to Reload because that's the place to be. You're not at Reload. You're not listening to the rock band. You didn't go up. You better put your hands up. You know, like, so it was one of those things that, and this will be an underlying point to a lot of what I say, it didn't feel authentic. Right. And if something doesn't feel authentic, whether you want to accept it or not, it doesn't feel right to you.
Right.
So for something that constantly I was running into this feeling of like, this doesn't feel right. Is this for me? So I was lucky enough to right across the street from me was, his name was, well, I called him Mr. Carl. Couldn't tell you his last name. But he ran off of Clay Road out here. It was actually one of the largest black churches in Houston at the time. Yeah. I mowed his lawn for a whole summer. He gave me his pool table. It was great. But
that's a good trade-off.
Yeah, it was a good trade-off. But there was a lot of times where I would struggle and I would go outside and he would be out and I'd be like, can I just pick your brain? And I would ask him questions and things. And the part that I struggled with going through it was I didn't like the answers that I heard. And it's not that like, oh, I disagree with it. But again, I came back to that.
Like it.
I don't feel like this is authentic. I think it's out of a playbook almost, right? Like you heard this. If I went to a doctor, I have a cough and this. Well, do you have this? Yes. Well, then it's this. Right? So it was more of like the approach to it. And
it's more clinical.
In hindsight, he's probably just trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
But again, it was another moment where I struggled. And then with all of the questions that I ask, and I've always had a good social group of people, but I was always like the floater.
Yeah.
I had friends in every different group of people because I just got along with people. And
Sounds
I could
like me.
Yeah. You can find good things. You can have a good conversation with someone that you have absolutely nothing in common.
Right.
So
What a novel idea
yeah, crazy.
to
right?
hang out with people that
Lost
different
these
opinions.
days.
Yeah.
Absolutely lost these days. But like, so I had good relationships with people. I was in a good place with, kind of like who I was, but I was also at that point where I was asking a lot of questions about stuff. And then I really got caught up on, oh man, I'm gonna go crazy. But I was like aliens, right?
Yeah.
Like I was Mr. Aliens, and that all stemmed from the getting further away from God and accepting this. And I will say this, the religion of science.
Yeah.
And saying like, well, how Men in Black, we've all seen Men in Black.
Sure,
And
great
like, what
movie.
a crazy concept. It's such a cool theory to think about. And like, we could all be in someone's thumbnail right now. Like, that's a really, really cool thing to think about.
Yeah.
Right. And
creative.
wow, what a noble thing for me to say that I'm not special.
Right.
I'm
Sure.
noble for saying this. I'm better than you because I can accept that I'm a nobody and you think you're somebody. And it just kept growing and growing to the point to where I was not only an atheist, I was a dang poster child. I would have conversations that I knew how to handle. I knew what you were going to say.
You've been
because
around
I
it.
knew what you were. Because I'd questioned it.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believed at that time what I believed because of the questions and answers I had received.
Do you think that I'll call it clinical Christianity. I don't know the people involved. I'm sure it wasn't every single one, right? The church is full of lots of different folks, really authentic, sincere, amazing people who love God and follow Jesus, really great. But that clinical Christianity that you talked about, which is this idea that this is the answer, so think this way, and if you don't, then you're this. And there's no nuance, there's no understanding, there's no investment in the why behind and really getting to the deeper parts of a person, right? That's why it becomes so clinical, because you're looking at a symptom, this is the diagnosis, this is the fix, so do that and you'll be fine. And also don't waste too much of my time.
This is how we treat this.
So that when you when you were an atheist, you understood that very clearly, right? Because that was your experience. So it made it a little easier to push some buttons, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's how I was.
When I was a button presser.
A boot and
I'm talking
pusher.
to boot it, man.
For whatever reason, we just turned Canadian.
Yeah, No, but I could press a button, and man, let me tell you, I enjoyed it. Like I really got off on it. I was like, this is gonna be fun. I can't wait to destroy this person. And I'll tell you, I walked away almost every time being like, yep, I did exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I destroyed that person's belief, but I got out what I had to say. They had to hear me.
Yeah.
And anyone who's logical would understand.
Oh, the logic argument. I used it a lot.
Yeah. So it's in being in the military, I got to meet people from all walks of life.
What branch?
Army. Go Army.
Go Army.
Go Army,
I'd
beat
ask you
Navy.
which one's the best, but I know the answer.
Well, yeah,
it's the Army.
They'll always tell you that. But I will also say, and I'll say this on record, I was a recruiter for the Army.
Were you?
Yeah. I have really good friends in all branches. Every branch is a good branch depending on what it is you want to do. For me, in the Army, I got to pick what I want to do. I got a bonus to go do it. They trained the heck out of me to go do it.
Yep.
And I'm who I am today for it.
Yeah.
If I would have gone in the Air Force for whatever reasons, same thing, Navy. Now, I'll still say on record. On record, off record, on record. Depending on what you want to do, the branches have different things.
They
right?
function. They have different functions.
View them as a business or a university, right? A place of knowledge, a place of growing. What do you want to grow from? Pick your branch and then go. I wanted to go fight.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it to me, my experience was if the U.S. Army shows up, not the Marines, not the Air Force, the Navy, but if the U.S. Army shows up, they're interested.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, we'll send the Marines over to do this. You know, they'll go in, they'll create a ruckus. We'll fly the Air Force overhead. But if they really want it, the Army's going to be there.
It does seem that the Army, from an outside perspective, never served in the military, have a deep appreciation for the function and how just the heart behind the people who are able to do that. I think that's lost on a lot of people. I'm a service-oriented person. As a Christian, I know that this is my purpose on the earth. Jesus came, it says, to not be served, but to serve and be a ransom for many. That was like the example of Christ. So when I think about military, people who disagree with the people that they're serving, that they don't agree with a country all the time, that they have differing beliefs, and they're like, but I'll go give my life for you so that you can continue to live in security and safety. I think that that's really valuable, and I think it's noble. We could get into the nuances at some other point about, the politics, which that'll have to be a whole nother podcast.
That's a
For me and you, we'll
whole
talk about that. We might need to do that offline
Yeah.
first. But I think that that's such an amazing an attribute of a person who says, I will be willing to lay my life down, both for my brothers, but also for people I don't know and who I know that I fundamentally disagree with. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Because specifically as we're talking about faith in God and things, that attitude of Christ is the thing, right? That we put our hope in. That's what actually makes something authentic for us. It's not clinical Christianity at that point. It's like, this we're talking about like life, laying down life.
Real, yeah.
So back to the Army and
So I got to meet a lot of different people,
Yeah.
right? So I got to ask a lot of questions. When I say ask a lot of questions, I had a 3-day conversation with somebody, is fire living or not? And it was a great conversation. It was a really cool conversation to have. So like, especially like on guard duty or post missions where you're just observing a line, waiting to see if anyone's coming, like you have really wild conversations. And I would say I'm 40 and I went through that phase for probably, well, I think it's easier to say just when I came out of it. I probably came out of this 6 years ago.
yeah,
34, 35 years
you
old.
had some wandering.
Yeah. And the I think one of the reasons that I'm not upset by it in any way is because I know how I learn and I know how I accept things and I have to experience stuff. I have to experience something to learn it a lot of times.
Dude, I think there's so many more people that are like that. Why is that so hard?
I know.
Why can't we just? Do you ever ask
There's
yourself
so
this
much
question?
easier ways to do it. And we're just like, I'm going to do that really difficult one.
Well, and as a parent, you look now and you're like, I don't know, maybe this is different for you, but for me, it's I question like for my kids, why won't you just listen? Don't you know that I'm telling you this so that you don't have to experience the pain and anguish and the longevity of wandering that I did? And then at the same moment, I hear God just going, like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
You realize that this is you.
You right now, yeah.
Yeah.
They have to go through that exact same journey. They have to experience it.
What was it that brought you out of that season of wandering?
Man, so it was a combination of things. It started off with, once again, that underlying theme of me questioning things. I have a lot of questions about our society. I mean, a lot. Where we're at, who we are. I've always been a big history buff, and now it's one of those things that it's like bothers me because I'm watching in real time, whether you agree with things or not, false history being put into books.
Yeah.
So
In a lot of ways, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of questioning things, which is funny because through all the questioning, it brought me right back to God. And then there's a really funny meme that I came across one time, and it was like the evolution of people. And it's like, oh, you're just like dumb or whatever. And then it's like, oh, you find religion or science and you're like, okay, you do this. And then you go to science and you're like, I'm a genius. And you think you're at the top level, but you got to go to that next level of the person who comes through both of those and then has that understanding. And the people who do that, when they come through it, even the most stubborn people always end up falling right back into that God is there. He's very real. It's just a matter of how you feel you interact with them or how you feel his presence is in your life. So that was the big part of it that really got me going. And then Laura, man,
This is your wife.
my wife, I mean, that is my whole world. She is everything to me. She has pulled me out of some fire.
She seems to be like sometimes our wives are the flagpole and we're the flag flying in the wind.
100%.
Yeah.
Like we get to go out and be everything that we are because at the end of the day, we have someone we can be vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Somebody who's genuinely going to look out for you and tell you, hey, look, I know you feel this way, but like you need to hear this.
Somebody who's strong enough to lovingly get in your face.
Yes.
That my wife and your wife are very similar in that. I think that a good, strong, godly woman is able to do that in a way that doesn't like demean or diminish your masculinity, which is a whole conversation in our culture, but can still know you well enough to say, hey, I'm going to help anchor you, right? Of course, Jesus is our anchor, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the flagpole's got to be in something.
Yeah.
So anyways, keep going. That's great. She is.
No, I mean, just phenomenal. So, I mean, she checked me, you know, when I needed to be checked, and I attempt to check her sometimes, and she lets me know that I didn't check her correctly. But it was a lot of.
Is she gonna listen to this or watch this?
Oh yeah.
We're not editing this out. We're not editing anything.
No,
That's great.
No, she's good. She'll just giggle at me.
That's awesome.
But like, so she helped me with a lot of things, right? And it was one of those things that she's very authentic.
Yeah.
She is okay with being different. She's okay with not going with the flow of everything. So that's something I can really buy in when she tells me something. She means that. And she's such a good person. And when I say this, I mean it like in a level that I can't quite honestly explain.
Yeah.
She is such a good person that she is a light in my life. And when she says certain things to me, or she believes in something so strongly, I feel I'm an idiot to not give it some weight.
She carries a credibility with her because of her authenticity.
Yeah.
This is, okay, before we keep going, I think this is really important. Credibility is not about knowledge at the end of the day.
Agreed.
And in matters of faith specifically, when it comes to helping people understand the nature of God and his aliveness or his reality or whatever, I have found that people who use knowledge to win somebody aren't as effective as people who have credibility through their authenticity and kindness, and they represent God through experience. And that type of influence is far greater than any book smarts.
It's weird how you know that. It's almost like you've lived it.
Dude, we'll get it. This is for you, not for me. But yes, I do think I think that it's incredible because I have a similar experience as you. I met a lot of people who wanted to argue and prove God. And I have come to realize that people do that may not actually believe as much as they say they do. They're not as confident in their faith. They're not as certain. Because here's the thing. You could come and tell me that I'm an idiot. You could say, you lean on Jesus because you're weak. You don't understand anything about the real world. And they can say all the things I used to say and that you used to say. And I'll sit there and go, oh, hey, I'm sorry you feel like that. Not in a demeaning, demoralizing way, but just there's zero things that people can say to unconvince me of the reality of God ever. And I know that I don't know. I know a very minute amount of what the world is about, like as far as like the realities of, I don't know. There's lots of things I don't know about. Quantum physics, for instance, I don't know. It's interesting, but it could not unconvince me of God.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah, there's nothing in there. So we'll have to get in that conversation
Yeah.
at some point of what locked it in for you, because
Her authenticity, though, gave her credibility to you. And I
Yeah.
love that the light part. That's how we reflect Jesus to people.
Yeah.
That is the light of the world.
when she's one of those souls that people just spilled things to her, they just feel
Yeah.
that comfort. So she did the old Christian trick where she's like, will you come to church with me? We know that one, right? We all know that trick. And it was a little tiny church called Hope City.
Yeah.
Big old church. So I got in there maybe a year after it had opened. Her and her friend Christine, who were both pretty big in the church growing up. And we're like, hey, we're going to this new church. We really like it. I was courting my wife at the time.
Ooh, courting. That's a whole subject we could get into.
So she was like, hey, I'd really like for you to come to church with me. I know our first date, it was horrible. I was such an idiot. But she was like, I know how you feel about things. She's like, but would you be willing to come to church with me? And I was like, yeah, of course. Right.
Yeah.
we're in that relationship phase where all I'm doing is serving you every way I can. I'm just going to serve you in any way.
You just got the frosting. You're pouring the frosting on.
Yeah.
I've met more guys at church because of girls
Oh, yeah.
than ever girls because of guys.
He works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?
He does work in
He's like,
any
I
way.
know what works.
That's right. In any way.
So I started going to church, and every time we would leave church, we would have a conversation. And to me, that was the best part about it.
Yes.
Because the whole time I sat in church, I am picking this man apart.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, blop, 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 blop. When you going to ask for my money, right? Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
so this
I
whole
had the same
thing.
attitude.
And the part that got me, and mind you, I told you I was struggling with this. Like I was getting closer to it, but I wasn't quite in it. The part that got me was we would have these conversations every time on the drive home because it was in Memorial City and we live out here in Cypress. So the drive home, we would have conversations like, how did you feel about that? Like, what did you think? What was the point of that? What did you associate with that? And there were times where we didn't even make it through church. We were bawling. I mean, just absolutely the stuff we're going through, like it felt like it hit you so close.
Yeah.
And then it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was cool, but it was like, it really started to lose its authenticity. And then whole ordeal went down.
Yep.
We hadn't been going to the actual physical church for a while, been watching online with the wonderful COVID-19 madness. So we had just kind of watched some stuff online. Whole crazy ordeal came out. And then once again, that's one of those things, which quite honestly, if I was Satan, I would do.
Yep.
I would use a fallible person
Yep.
to do something in a church to ruin the whole
We need
church
to talk
idea.
about this for sure.
Yeah. So, and I struggle with, as a matter of fact, that's kind of how you and I got on our first conversation about each other.
Yeah.
Man, we're going to be all over the place. Just
That's
so you know.
okay. Come on with it.
When I moved in here, I was reconnaissance in the United States military.
Yep.
I look at everything all the time. I'm always watching
could tell.
Wazowski. Right? Always watching.
Always watching Wazowski.
Yeah. So like I see people and I see their habits and I'm big on patterns. And I used to tell my wife all the time, like, man, have you seen that cool guy in the cul-de-sac? Literally, the nickname I had for you was the cool guy. I was like, he just looks so cool. He's always barefoot in shorts out there, like doing something with wood or
Just trying
doing something in his lawn.
trying to hold on to any measure of manliness I can.
Yeah, just whatever. You
funny.
reeked it. Like you
That's
left a
awesome.
snail trail of manliness wherever you walked. I'm like, man, people just want to follow that
It's
dude.
a gross analogy, but yeah.
So, and we had small conversations here and there. And then I actually walked over one day and I had a Hope City shirt on. And you were like, Hope City. And I was like, oh, yeah. And he's like, you said something like, what do you know about that or something? And I was like, and I kind of told you how Jeremy really helped. And you were very supportive of everything, but I'm great at reading people. And I'm like, there's more conversation I would love to have at some point in this immediately. But then you told me you were a pastor. And I'm like, I was like, you didn't bring that up in the multiple conversations.
No.
And you said something
Never.
that was super authentic to me. And it was, I've really learned to not start a relationship with a title like that because then you don't really get to know people.
Yeah.
I've learned, these are your words, I have learned that when you build a relationship with people and then you learn other things about them in the future, you already have that relationship.
Yeah. The pastor thing is, I've learned over the years, one, a pastor's position is at the bottom, not the top. That's not the church culture we live in currently. And this goes into kind of the fallibility of a pastor and why they fall and the detriment to that and how we can sort of mitigate that. We'll definitely get into that because I think that I'm writing actually that note down so I don't forget to talk about it because my ADD brain goes all over the place.
I'm terrified. I'm just going to veer off track and not remember what I was talking
Well,
about.
that's why I brought a book. We can write it all down.
Thank you.
But I think, I remember that interaction, and over the years, people ask you what you do, and early on, I'm like, oh, I'm a pastor. And what ends up happening is I realized that people have some history there, good or bad. Their pastor was the best, greatest. They were godly. They taught them about Jesus, and they loved them. They're like, oh, you're a pastor. More often than not, they've read the news. If they're not a believer, they read the news. They hear about all the terrible things that happen in churches.
Which is there for a reason.
And it's meant to remind us that people, men, pastors, whoever, are not our hope. They are not our hope.
100% agree with you.
Like Jesus is our hope. And pastors who don't remind their congregations of that as often as possible are going to create more harm when they fall. Because here's the deal. I am a sinful person. I am not infallible. There's only one that I know of that was that way. And his name is Jesus, and I'm not him. So I try to remind people as often as possible, hey, I'm just a guy.
Yep. I
have been given a purpose in this world to tell people about the good news of Jesus, to help them walk in a way that is good for them and good for the world. But all that to say, in our conversation, I saw your Hope City. I knew what Hope City was. I knew exactly who.
Oh, I know,
that it was a church there, but I was like, I wonder if he got that like at Goodwill or if he goes there. I didn't know. So I was like, okay. So when I told you after, it was definitely very strategic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was calculated.
It was. There's strategy.
Well done, though.
Thank you. I mean, we're still sitting here talking, right?
Yeah, I think it was just, it was right choices. It's knowing when to introduce something and when not.
Discernment matters, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, keep going.
So like we kind of had conversations going through the whole church process.
Yeah.
And then, man, I went through an incident, and I'll talk lightly on the incident.
Yeah.
Just for
You can leave names out. That's fine.
certain reasons, but I was going through a somewhat rough time. My wife and I had just gotten married, so that's probably why it was a rough time. Super stressful.
Yeah, it's a lot of change.
Been married for maybe 5 or 6 months. Got into a situation. They call it road rage, even though it wasn't road rage. There were just cars involved, where somebody pulled a gun on me and my wife, and pulled it on the wrong person. Well, that's what I will say. And the situation didn't go well for that person. And that person's okay. But immediately, because I came out, I don't want to say the victor, but I'm trying to paint a picture. I came out as the dominant person. I was very much treated as if I were a bad person and I had done bad things. And I was drugged through a ringer for it. But it was in that moment of like, very scary moment. Yeah. Right? And then to come out of that very scary moment, even though I've been in scary moments like that, to immediately I've had law enforcement my whole life. I am that guy who just tells everything and honest about everything. And
because truth is supposed to be the right thing.
And it burned me. And it burned me with just one person. It was just one person in this whole chain of command that had a bad feeling about it. It cost me money, everything. But the whole point of this was I'm sitting in a jail cell, possibly going away forever, thinking about what's really important to me. Yeah. Right? And what really matters. And you start that praying moment again where you're like, guide me through this. Yeah. Like, no, all the struggles I've had or whatever, guide me through this, get me where I need to be. And there was a moment that I just felt like I could let go. And I struggle with anxiety forever. Yeah. And I felt like I could just kind of let go of it. And it wasn't forever. It did come back. But I was able to get through that moment in what I was doing. And when I finally got out, and I got to see my wife and everything, it was like anything we'd ever argued or bickered about was stupid. And
perspective changed.
Yeah. And there was a whole lot of conversation. And one of the cool things was as I got out of when they arrested me, the guard who got me out actually is like, can I pray with you?
Gosh, and I was like, how God does that.
Oh my God, yeah. And man, let me tell you, I bawled. I was like a blubbering baby. I was just like, it was so emotional to me because like, there's only one person who made that happen. Why would another grown man who's in a profession that's very rough-necked be like, hey, by the way, stranger, I feel the need that I need to pray with you. And I was like, damn. So like the whole way home, I was like choked up, dealing with a lot of things. And that was the first time I'd say in a super long time where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put things in his hands. This was right during COVID. So going through the whole court process was like 8 months. I ended up getting no billed. Grand jury said like, no, self-defense. Yep. You're no charges.
Wow.
But going through that whole thing, the only thing that would get me through it in my most anxious moments, to the point where I was nauseous, was praying and be like, help me get through this. And I'm not saying that that moment sealed it for me. It was a combination of that and the pattern. I'm a pattern person.
Me
I
too.
follow patterns.
Yeah.
And when I did that, I felt right. It felt authentic to me.
Yes.
I'm like, I can buy into this. And then that home, that beautiful home over there that I never thought in a million years I would be able to have, we looked for houses for probably 12, 13 months.
Wow.
And it was everything. We were looking over in Copperfield area, older homes, like we can get a really good price. This is a price range we're looking for. But it was so competitive that you're bidding 30, 40,000 over
It
the
was
home.
crazy time.
Just to try to get it in that 2-day window that it exists. My wife, the beacon that she is, said, I'm just going to look at Bridgeland, because Bridgeland was a dream for us.
Sure.
It was like, hey, that's a dream community. I love the outdoorsy. I love the trails everywhere. And it's a community that's super diverse, which is what I really thrive in.
Do you notice around like our street?
Super
It's
diverse.
so awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways,
It's
so
it's,
good.
It's crazy. Where was I on this one?
Get in the house. Coming
Yeah,
out.
so get in the house. So it's a whole process of, my mom used to tell me something when I was younger, and she's like, David, you need to take care of your credit because one day it's going to matter. And I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm 20. So it matters. It actually matters, Johnny. At some point, it's like super important.
They get you with it, man.
Yeah.
There was a time it didn't matter,
No.
but these are the times.
That's
it
a whole
does.
scam.
We
That's
have
a whole nother conversation.
conversation. We have to
But
revisit
so going through
later.
that whole process over and over and over again, we were like, let's just do it. Let's just put money down on this house. And it never worked. I mean, never worked. Like, hey, we're going to do this. And then something would happen where our money had to go there. Or something happened where that fell through and now we're going to have to change it to this. And it's like, it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. And then this home,
Wow.
everything started to work together, and we're like, holy crap. When we stopped and we were just like, hey, we're putting it in your hands.
Yeah.
We're terrified. We don't know what we're doing. Clearly we're doing this wrong. Please let us know. And it just opened up.
Isn't that
Like
crazy?
so I love coincidences, and I think coincidences can prove a lot of things here or there. But this was just, this 100% made sense. It's like, if I were to tip a cup of water right now, we know what it's going to do. That's how I felt that whole process was. Like, if I just stay true to this, there's going to be ups and downs. But if I just stay true to this, it will work. And every time that I've done that, it's worked.
I love that.
It's worked. So there's been plenty of times where I'm like, I'm not going to do that because I'm me. Right? But when I do it, it works. So kind of going through the process of realizing that I think, for one, we've been lied to as a whole in society. And to believe in something that most people would say is crazy is actually probably right where you should be.
Oh my gosh. God works in the, see, here's what people don't realize about God. I like the idea of coincidences. We'll have to talk about this at some point, maybe right now. I don't believe in coincidences for this one reason. If coincidences happen and they're actually chance, then God's not in full control. And I just fundamentally, I think that's outside of his character to not be in full control. But the thing that we call coincidence is actually the supernatural working of God in a way that is completely out of our control, right?
I agree with you.
And like,
I actually agree with you 100%.
and the idea that we are ever in control of anything,
We should be stupid.
we really, really, like you said, when you finally let go, you release, you're like, okay, God, I worked really hard to try to make something happen, and that hasn't worked. So maybe I'm just going to let you do
What's your plan?
Right.
What's your plan? Can we start doing the real thing now?
and then it just, and
Yeah.
then God works it out.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He's like, here you go. Here's your checklist. Start knocking it out.
And the fact that he put you here after 13 months of checking and it didn't work, happened to put you here. This conversation that's happening currently is because specifically while that was happening in your life, my wife and I, who lived up a different part of this neighborhood in our first home we ever had together as a married couple, Lindsay was like, oh, maybe we should just see.
Yeah.
Chance, not chance. And it, we just happened to be on the same page. So we kind of dibble dabbled. This house had been sitting here. I was like, this is no way we could buy this house. No way. Happened to be that the time was right. We got one offer on our house after a whole bunch of people came and looked at it. we took it. It was great. And this house was basically held for us. And I'll say held for us because the showing agent for Perry basically showed other people other houses after we met. And he said, I really wanted you guys to have this house. That never happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Salespeople at that time were selling.
Oh, they were making, it was big time.
It was so cool. God ordained for you. And now that we get a chance to sit here, like it's more proof to me
Yeah.
how God works.